Hello. Sorry to keep you waiting. I was a moment or two late today. Hello. All right, I'm just letting everybody in.
And the fact that these words
Hi.
come from you.
Hello. Hello. All right. I've got the majority here.
Hey, Professor.
Hello. Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. All right. So we've got more animation in store today. So I want to get a look at the handout with you. So let me do some screen sharing. All right. Let me also let that person in. Okay. All right. Let's see what we need to know. All right. Hey, before we dive in here, just to give you a rough picture of, a little peek at the rest of the semester. So there's really only two subjects remaining, and by far more of it is animation oriented. But sort of in the middle, it's a little less sequential, than it's been. Sort of in the middle, we're going to include something called P5. I'll come back and say more about it, but I just want to tell you a little bit just to loosen things up a little bit. P5 is a special kind of programming technology. Mostly everybody's heard of JavaScript, JavaScript being a very popular programming language. P5 is a close relative, and it's a language that's used by a lot of creative people. A lot of artists, for example, use P5. So one can draw with code in P5, which is pretty interesting. It strikes me as kind of strenuous. One could even do animation in P5, make the drawing move. I'm not saying that it's a practical program, like I wouldn't go throwing out my pencils because of P5 or throwing out Adobe Animate for that matter, but it's pretty interesting. And it's used, as far as I could tell, primarily in two environments. One of them for a certain kind of artist who wants to code and can use it sometimes in the physical world. I'm pretty sure you could figure out how to rig it up so that every step on your staircase is a musical note. So people could dance around on the stairs and make music. So it would be programming, somehow connecting sensors on the steps to some kind of audio device, and maybe corresponding to notes on a keyboard. So it's very interactive, or as someone moved through a space, the lights could change. Or it could just be screen-based art. So a certain kind of artist gets involved in P5, not so much a day-to-day programmer who's out there making a living. It's certain types of creatives that like it. But it's also one of the most popular programming language in schools across the country, high schools and colleges, because it's so close to JavaScript and a few other languages, but more friendly and more fun, that schools see it as a way to introduce people to programming. So I want to tell you, I don't know why I bring it up right now, how I got started on this. I'm off trail right now. But I just want to say, so the way I'm going to do it though is I'm not a big P5 guy, but I've use it, and I use JavaScript as well. We're doing some drawing in motion here, right? In Adobe Animate, a place built for it. Then we're going to take a little pause, just like a little detour, maybe 2 classes, spend like a week on it, and see what's similar and what's different for these people who think all in programming. And we're going to do a little bit of very little. Don't get, for those of you who love this idea, don't get too excited. It's going to be rather brief. Like I said, 1 or 2 classes just to get a taste, see what the code looks like and what it can do and where you'd learn more. And then we're going to come back for the last round of animation, which is going to be focused on text, something typically called kinetic typography. Kinetic typography is probably the most common form of animation that we never talk about or even think about or even notice that we see it every day. When you think about it, what percentage of adults, let's say 18 and over, watch animated movies, and how much do they watch per year? If you're into it, you may say a lot, but the average person might not watch any. It's common for someone in that age group to never see an animation again until they have a kid. Uh, so while there are wonderful movies and TV shows nowadays made for adults, I saw Little BoJack Horseman, good, very much made for adults. But by and large, it's still a little fringy. It's still a little fringy, but kinetic type is on every ad. So unless you're watching the kind of TV that has no ads, it's another thing. But if you're watching any station that has ads, next time you watch the commercials and notice how the text moves. It doesn't matter if it's a live action celebrity trying to sell you breakfast cereal, Brad Pitt selling, breakfast cereal. The text is going to be animated that comes out that says the name of the cereal and main points about the cereal. Doesn't matter if it's about cars, selling you your dream four-wheel drive car or whatever it is. It's still text, and the text is almost always in motion. If you're looking at a screen, like I said, watching commercials, never mind the title sequences of every movie and every TV show, and the closing credits of every movie and every TV show. Those are all examples of kinetic text, kinetic typography, I should say. So that's where we're headed. I'm actually not going to go there today. I want to do more fun animation stuff and animation principles. We started with tweening the other day. I want to continue that today. And then zone in on taking phrases and how we're going to make an entertaining half a minute based on words, written words. And that's going to be the final project, in fact. Even though I'm completely off the map right now, does anybody have any questions about anything related to this topic? I don't think so. A little too soon, right? You have questions maybe once we dive in.
Maybe later on.
Yeah, I hope so. I really do. All right, new Zoom link's working. All this other stuff's the same as always. I would like to remind people that if you've not checked Blackboard recently, you should, unless you already know what all your grades are. I upgraded everything on the 10th, so it was just 2 days ago. Yeah, I believe it was the 10th. So whatever I'd received by that day has been graded. So you'll know, frankly, if you're passing and if you're excelling, or if you need to take some kind of action, you really do need to go to Blackboard. All right, still in Animate, don't have anything more to say about that. Where we left off was shape tweening. I want to do a few things with you before we continue shape tweening. So if you'd open up Adobe Animate with me. While it's opening, I would like to just mention, again, if you're getting a similar warning about this one font called Osaka, you could just click skip. I got a little alert. I guess something closed strangely last time. All right. So here we are in Adobe Animate. Hey, can you guys hear me okay? Oh, good. It's really noisy just outside my window, but if it's not affecting you, I'm all right with it. Okay. So professionally, when you're starting animation, one of the first questions always is, how big is it? No one wants to do any work at the wrong size. That would obviously be very problematic. Unfortunately, there's not a hell of a lot of rules, especially if you're a multimedia person like myself, where your animation may be part of something larger. So it might have to sit on a page or even be in a movie for that matter, but not the whole movie. Some decisions get made here, but others get made under the File menu, New, or just here. So I'm going to ask you to go to File menu, New, or just click Create New. They both open the same following window. Once you're here, if it's a custom size, you type in the width and height and the frame rate. Right now, I'm going to ask you to use the standard, what they call standard, like we were using the other day. And that's 640 wide, 480 tall, and please check the frame rate of 24. That's pretty critical. And let's click Create. I would like everybody to always take note of this feature up here in the upper right that I'm pointing to. Mine says 100%. It's got a large arrow on the right. And you know, you could zoom in with it, except for it's not exact. So I'll often come here and choose 100% and then either make it a little larger or a little smaller. I like it as big as I can get, but I always want to know where the floor is, the walls, and the ceiling. All right. The last few times I saw you, we started, well, the last two times I saw you, we started drawing and we started talking about merge, right? And so I kept on asking people to turn the strokes off. And I'm not gonna make a big deal about that subject today. I just want to say very quickly, there's nothing wrong with drawing things that have outlines. It just when you're merging stuff, it's a little bit easier to start with outlines off. I want to make a small point. This is not critical. It's a good way to get started though. Could everybody get to the rectangle tool? Now you'll remember most of the time when you choose a tool that can use color, two boxes show up for color at the bottom of the toolbar. And most of the time they also show up here on the right on the properties palette. So you just chose the rectangle tool. I'd like you to pick a new fill, any color you feel like using. And I'd like you to make sure that the stroke has got that red line, stroke of none, no color. So if you happen to have a stroke, click on the chip and find this one. It's got a little slash on it. That means color of none. I want to show you something. Now you already know that you could merge shapes. So I'm going to ask you if you would to merge a few shapes. I'm going to make myself a simple graphic of a side view chair. So here's my chair. So I made it out of 3 shapes. I'm in merge mode. I'm assuming that everyone else is in merge mode right now. And you're going to test in a minute with me. So if that did merge, you switch to the black arrow and click it, and you'll see the little dots show you that the whole drawing is selected. So of course I could change its color if I want. If you clicked afterwards and only one part got selected, you were not in merge mode. Is anyone not merging right now? I know a couple of you were very interested in that particular subject. I'm not going to demonstrate, but I do want to mention something. If you're drawing something and you thought you were in merge mode and realized you weren't, select those parts and do Command B or Control B. That means break apart. It means break those separations apart and let them merge. You could always change your mind later. Command B will break apart something that was in object mode. But that's not really where I wanted to go. One of the reasons I like merge mode is if I am going to use outlines, if I do want black lines on the outside like a typical tattoo artist uses or a typical cartoonist uses, right? I could do it even now. Check this out. What I'm looking for on the toolbar is something that looks like a paint bucket. This tool pours fill colors, but if you press on it, if you press on the paint bucket, there's a tool underneath it called the ink bottle tool. And it looks like letter S is the shortcut if you want to take a shortcut. This is the only program I know of that has this tool. And you know what it is? It's the stroke tool. So if I get the ink bottle tool, I could then go and choose a stroke. I'm going to do it from down here and pick a color and click on the edge of the object. And there's my stroke. Notice the stroke went around the whole chair. It didn't separate the 3 original shapes. I want to be really honest with you about this. This is so stylistic. I'm not a big stroke guy, so I don't use this tool a hell of a lot. A lot of my art years are spent as a painter, and I still think like a painter. So I like my colors uninterrupted, though I admire a good line drawing. Does anybody have any questions about that small addition? No. Okay, let's delete that object because it's not going to help us with the next demonstration. So select the whole thing, throw it out. All right, I want to warm up and I want to warm up quickly. I want to do some fast, very simple frame by frame, right? So just join me on this little exercise. Could you make yourself a rectangle of a fair size? If you want to change anything about it, get the black arrow. So in other words, maybe you have a stroke, but you wish it was thicker. Well, with the black arrow, I'll double click right on the stroke, get the whole stroke. I could come to the right side and change its weight or its color. Now, if you don't want a stroke at all, steps are similar. Double click on the stroke and just press delete. All right, so the choice is yours this time. Do you want a stroke or not? I'm working without it. Just real quickly, I want to talk up frame by frame, possibly for the last time. So if I wanted this geometric shape to change in any way, I could change it myself frame by frame. I could keep duplicating the drawing, make a little change, duplicate it, make a little change. If it was going to change to another obvious geometric shape, probably wouldn't do it by hand. So let's compare those options. All right, if you've got your rectangle, I'd like you to look at the timeline. You're on layer 1, the only layer that you get by default. And its keyframe is black because you have artwork in it. All right, it's time for the F6 trick. So most of us know in the room now whether you need to hold down Fn, the function key, or not. I do. So I'm holding down my Fn key and I tap F6 once. I look at the timeline and I see I've got a second keyframe. That represents a duplicate of the drawing. So at this stage, we could start making some changes. I'm going to suggest a few. With the black arrow, I'm going to grab a corner and I'm going to bring it down just a little. Very, very little bit. We're getting a little bit more experience with this, so I want to say a little bit about how little is little. Small changes produce two results. A lot of small changes make a very smooth animation. So it won't look like junky old animation, like a bad GIF, smooth. But it also means slow. Smooth and slow, right? Bigger changes will be faster and a little sharper, right? I'm working with slow right now. I made a change, so I want to F6 again. Tell you the truth, my change is a little big for my taste, so I'm backing up a little. F6 again. Look at your timeline. You know you're on the third keyframe. You could take that down a little bit more. Let's do a few of these, right? Just to warm up. F6, make a little change. F6, make a little change. Now my next F6, I'm going to suggest that you make multiple changes. So do I want this to continue moving down? Maybe I do. Do I want it to move to the left? Maybe I do. So I'm going to tell this to start coming out to the right. And again, I just want you to imagine, all right, that corner's dropping. But what else can you imagine? Should the bottom widen? I'm going to do that for a bit. So I'm taking the two bottom corners and widening it out a little bit. So we're talking about simultaneous changes. I made 3. I'm going to F6 again. And I'm going to make more simultaneous changes. This one is coming in and down. These are simply going out. And I'm still going with small increments, so I have not changed my pace. I'm going at a similar pace for a little while. Down and over, I'm taking these out. Yours does not have to be the same as mine, but I am asking for multiple changes. And it depends what you're after. I'm now introducing more changes on top. Now, what I'm about to say is all about speed. I'm F6ing again, and I've not made changes yet on this new copy. I'm on frame 9 myself, and I just copied it. So this looks just like frame 8. I want to say something. If I wanted the object to speed up, right, one thing I have to keep in mind is I'm making 3 changes going on, right? Do I want all 3 to speed up? You know, however this object's changing in multiple places, parts of its body, so to speak, should they all speed up? They don't have to, you know, but it'd be a lot to track in your mind. You know, when you have a goal, because it's a character or something, it may be a little easier. I'm going to make mine speed up. I'm going to have the same 4 points now, actually, respond at a faster rate. All right, I'm on the new one here, and I want to show you something in the way of a suggestion. I've shown this to you, I think, before with mixed results, you know, and maybe mixed results again. Onion skinning. So I want to show you guys something. I'm coming down to the bottom of the screen here, and I hope you can see it. It's this circle over a circle here, right? Some people might have their controls above the timeline, and mine's beneath it. And I'm going to turn that on. Let me zoom in a little bit. You could see there are ghosts behind this object. I hope you can make it out. I'm going to, oops, sorry. I'm going to zoom in even more. So you can see this pale ghost. Now, if you look at the timeline, I've got a blue bracket on the left, and that's showing me how much of the past I could see. Now, right now, I'm seeing a whole bunch of steps behind me, and it's supposed to help me know where I'm going and what kind of increments, what kind of changes I'm making, to what degree. If this is too much information, I'm confused by it. So I'm going to take that blue bar and drag it to the right. All I want to see is one step before it. So now that I can see that, that is the distance I've been going at. And if I move the playhead back, it's going to honor the bracket, but it's just going to show me the same 1 or 2 steps anyway before it. So here I am in the present tense. If you don't find that helpful, just turn it off. Press the same button. I have to zoom out though to see if it's helpful for me, so give me a minute. Playhead's over the new one. I'm taking this and I'm going to move it further. That's about the same distance as I was going, but I want it to speed up. So I'm going to go a little bit further. This here, I want to drop and take over, right? And that looks like similar distance to the last 2 steps, but I want it to speed up. So I'm going a little bit more. And in all cases, I'm trying to imitate that logic. I want to go a little bit bigger of a step, a bigger stride, so to speak. Now, what my goal is right now, and this is really just getting a taste of it. I don't think it's going to have a deep effect on the final project, but it's interesting. I'm going to attempt to speed up every step. I just did another F6. And I'm going to go even further than this distance. So this object's going to make bigger changes each time I make changes. Oops. So if I went that far out, this one I can't see the earlier changes, they're behind it, so I have to trust myself. And if each of these changes gets bigger, a little bigger than the last, the object's going to keep getting faster. So this is a big step I just took, but I'm going to go even bigger. I may introduce this. The whole idea is each succeeding step, if it's larger than the last step, speeds it up. Now, we don't have a specific goal right now. We're kind of, oops, if you move it like I just did, Command Z and click off. It's really just to warm us up and get a taste of the different ideas available. At any point you want to try it, turn off the onion skinning by pressing the same button, bring the playhead back to the beginning, and play it. So mine started gradually, and then it just went whoop, very smooth. I'm pleased with it. Okay, we've done versions of that before, right? So I'm just talking about the old frame-by-frame logic. And as I say, my generation, at least people I've known, we do a lot of frame-by-frame like this, but we avoid it. Because if there's another way, it'll be faster. So I reserve this type of behavior for when I just have to do it. Some stuff is just too complicated for the computer to figure out. A motion like that, I'm going to have to draw it myself. Do I want it slow? Small changes and many. Do I want it fast? That'd be just a few drawings. You know, if that thing's going to take a quarter of a second, that's 6 frames, 6 drawings to get all the way from here to here. I'd have to figure out what would 6 steps be, right? That'd be a quarter of a second. If I want to take a whole second, 24 drawings. Basically, there are ways to cheat, right? But I'm talking straight up right now. What about tweening, right? So this is really where we want to get. Let's try a little shape tweening. We just got a taste at the end on Tuesday. I really would like to go there now. By the way, if you're not liking frame by frame, you know, let it go for now. Let it go. Try something different with me. All right, can everyone open a new document? File menu, new. I'd like to stick with the same numbers, 640 wide, 480 tall, 24 frames per second, 24 drawings per second. Let's click create. All right, I want to go over first the first exercise we did last week, and then we're going to take it further. All right, I'd like you to get a rectangle. If you feel like changing your colors, you go ahead. Fill definitely, stroke optionally if you want. Somebody got locked out. Give me a second. All right. All right. Let me just see who's here. I am now about to take attendance. Give me a minute. Oops. 1 second. There we go. All right. So we got a new document. I'm not too picky, by the way, about the width and height, but I am about the frame rate. All right, shape tweening. Can everyone grab the rectangle tool, pick colors. If you want a stroke, you can make whatever decisions you want. I'm going to turn mine off. And I'd like a box maybe this big against the left wall. We're going to have that travel straight right and turn into a circle. Right, and then we're going to move forward from there. So frame one now has a black keyframe, and you could see that on the timeline. Now, one of the big questions is how long does stuff take? And I'm still working this out. I'm getting increasingly sensitive to pieces of a second. But how long should this thing take to cross the stage? I want to give it 1.5 seconds, right? So that's going to be like 1 Mississippi, 1 Missa to cross the stage, something like that. So the issue is this. We're not doing frame by frame now. The idea is we want the computer to speed it up for us. So I have to tell it about the conclusion. We just set up the beginning, all right? Box, left wall, frame one. And now I'm going to set up the conclusion. So I have to ask myself, when is that? Now, I want 1.5 seconds. That's here, frame 36. Now, I want to be crystal clear about something. I cannot draw here. I want to prove it to you. If I tried, don't do this. Look, there's no keyframe in frame 36. The drawing went back to frame 1. That's terrible. I'm going to Command Z. So here's the moral of that story. You can't draw whenever you want to. And I'm saying when intentionally, right? This is a when question. I want a new drawing 1.5 seconds down. I have to make a blank keyframe. You were doing a lot of F6ing before that copied the last keyframe. Now we need a blank one because I need a new drawing. So what I want you to do is find 36, not up here, right, in the layer, and either control click it or right click it because you want this. Anytime you need a new drawing to show up on any layer, you make a blank keyframe in the moment that interests you. And it shows up as a hollow circle. Okay, I want an oval on the right. I'd kind of like it about the same size as the square. So I could either eyeball it from memory or I could turn on onion skinning. And you'll notice I could see the square over there. So I turned on onion skinning just to help. It's pale, but I could see it. You know, you can do it by eye if you prefer, but this is what I really want. I want an oval on the right, about the same size as the square. The color's kind of up to you. I'm going to change mine. It's more interesting if it changes color. I'm going to turn the onion skinning off. Quick word about onion skinning. I don't use it as much as other animators. This particular situation, it was really helpful, you know, but I've gotten so used to doing things from memory. Oh, it's this big along this line, and I just pop it there. But the onion skinning definitely gives you more information to work with. I want you to check something though before we go any further. So there should be a black dot, a black keyframe here on your timeline. And when the playhead's there, you see the red circle. But there should still be a black dot in frame 1. And when you're there, you should only see the square. If at any point you see them both, you made a mistake. Don't be shy though, because everybody makes that mistake. Does anybody have two shapes that you could see at once?
No.
No? All right. All right. And now, by the way, I'm going to try to do better with the chats. So a couple people confided in me recently that they just find it easier to ask me stuff in the chats. So I'm going to try to do that. Okay. So you know one thing that's kind of weird? That's going to look almost like an animation, even though we're not done. And I want to prove it to you. So I brought my playhead back to frame 1 where the green box lives. And if I drag the playhead, I could see that green box continues to live until the next keyframe. As soon as I get to the next keyframe, that green box disappears and it's replaced. What's odd is the human eye can't deal with that. So it tries to convince me that it moved. Watch this. So I don't know about you, but my mind is trying to tell me that that object zipped over there at the last instant. And it's a strange optical illusion, but it's not what we want. We want that thing to really move across the whole stage. So you click in the same layer. So if there were 10 layers, you'd have to be careful, right? So you go in the same layer, but anywhere between the two keyframes will do. If it's on the right or the left, it'll have no effect anywhere. Now, once you've clicked in there, we need the menu to show up. So I'd like you to control click there. So again, you want to control click or right click if you have that kind of mouse, anywhere in between the two keyframes. And what we're looking for is this. Now I need to give you an alert about something. You could see there's 3 kinds of tween and they're very different. And I would like to get a taste of one more today. But right now, the only one that's going to work for us is create Shape Tween. If it worked, you should be seeing a few bits of evidence. One, you're seeing what the shape looks like where your playhead is currently. So mine's somewhere between a square and a circle because my playhead's in the middle. You should also see a color that's in between the first color and the last. I'm using opposite colors on the wheel, so it gets kind of browner and earthier in the middle. You know, I'm mixing opposite colors. But also, if you look at the timeline itself, that segment just turned orange on your layer. Orange in this version of Adobe Animate means shape tween. Lastly, on that orange bar is a skinny arrow. And it's basically saying you just asked for a tween from one moment from the first keyframe to the last. Can you bring the playhead back to the beginning? I'd like you to hit return or enter to play it. Pretty exciting stuff, really. I did a lot of talking, but it was about 1 minute worth of work. I really wish this feature could handle more complicated things. You know, really, it's very finicky, and I'm choosing shapes right now that are likely to work. Before we end the subject, I'm going to show you some that are unlikely to work. But before we do that, let's improvise a little bit. All right, can everybody make themselves a new layer? So coming down to the layers, you might recall this little plus button that's just above your current layer. You click it once to make a new layer. So you got a new layer there. It showed up at the exact same length as the prior layer, which is handy, right? I want you to bring the playhead back to the beginning so you remember what the beginning looks like, right? If I want another character to start at the beginning, I have to bring the playhead back. And there's a keyframe waiting for me. So I didn't have to ask for a blank one. Every layer comes with a blank keyframe to get you started. So this is what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to draw a rectangle right along the ceiling. Now I just did something a little goofy. I made it the same color as the circle that's going to show up, which means that I might have a little bit of confusion. I'm going to change this color to a brand new one. I would recommend that if you've used this color before, please choose a brand new color for it. And you'll see why soon. So your timeline may be the same length as mine, right? That's 36 frames. So it means we currently have 1.5 seconds to work with. And all that's going on right now is the earlier shape is doing its thing. The brand new shape on the upper layer isn't doing anything. What I wanted to do is to fill the screen. So it's a narrow rectangle, but by frame 36, I want it to be a rectangle exactly the same shape as the screen. So to do that, go to frame 36 of your new layer because there's no keyframe there. You can't put a drawing there unless you make your own keyframe. So while I'm on 36, I'm going to control click right in it. So be sure that you're in the right layer. You don't want to break the other layer. So right at the very end, 36 of your new layer, control click or right click. And again, insert blank keyframe. See, this one above it is actually F6. This one would copy the last keyframe. I don't want that. I want a blank one. If you look closely, you'll see that little circle showed up on your layer. And now you could actually draw. So what do I want? Well, as I was saying, I want a big rectangle. This time I'm going to leave it the same color. You don't have to, but I'm going to leave it the same color to make a point. So I'm on frame 36. I made a blank keyframe first. Insert blank keyframe. Then I was able to draw there. So if I bring the playhead back, I still don't have a finished animation. This is what I've got. Right, so at the last minute, that box is so big, it's actually hiding what we did. So there's clearly at least 2 steps we have to take. One, I want to get it tweening, right? So that skinny box gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But now I see also, I don't really want it to hide the star of the show, right? The first object we made. Let's bring this layer down to the bottom and that'll make it like a background. Let's get that out of the way. So your layer 2 should be underneath the other layer. So just go to the layers, press on layer 2 and pull it down so it's underneath layer 1. So I'm a little closer now. I could see this ball, but it's still not truly animated, right? That blue rectangle changes size, but it doesn't tween to the new size. You guys ready to shape tween it? Some of you more than ready. Some of you did it. Yes. I heard a question. I thought I did.
Nope.
No, just an exclamation. All right. So you got the idea. You want to go to that layer, right? The one that has no tween, so there's no orange bar there. You click anywhere between the 2 keyframes. So anywhere in the middle is exactly the same. And then you either control click again or right click to get this menu. And we're telling this layer to shape tween. I'd like you to bring the playhead back to the beginning and see how the whole show looks. Slick.
It didn't work for me.
It didn't work for you?
No, I don't know what I did.
You know, I would love to get a look at your screen. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, sure.
All right, I'm going to turn off my screen sharing. Hey guys, I am recording, right?
Yes.
It's a weird question, but oh, it came back, my little recording symbol. It disappeared for a while. All right. Because, you know, sometimes, Diamond, I could tell just from looking at the timeline. Oh, this looks like you're very close. Could you bring the playhead back to frame 1? Give me 1 second here. I want to double check something. That looks right. Could you bring the playhead over to 36? That also looks right. Okay, so this is what I want you to do. Go to your lower layer, click in that gray bar, anywhere in the gray bar, Yeah, you're right. Right there. Now, are you on a Mac?
I'm on Windows.
Windows? Can you right click? And you see way up top of that menu, there's 3 kinds of tween. Way up top there. You want the third one, create shape tween. Click that.
Oh, I thought I did that.
No, I want you to do the same thing on the layer above it. Create shape tween. Bring the playhead back to the beginning and play it. I'm kind of curious to see how this goes. So I admit it looks a little weird, and I think there's something strange going on the lower layer. Could you bring me back to frame 1? So it looks to me like there's only one. Oh, do you know how to hide a layer?
Hmm?
Do you know how to hide a layer?
No.
So do you see that little eye right there? Yeah, I would like you to, that's it. Click right there on layer 1, just like that. You're hiding that layer.
Okay.
I'm just trying to analyze your bottom layer. It looks like you do have one shape, and yet once it tweens over, it looks like there's 2 shapes. You see that? Like if you back up a little, I wonder if everybody, see that? Suddenly it looks like there's 2 shapes there. I have no idea why that would be. There needs to be one on each end. For right now, though, you're a lot closer. I'm going to ask you just to run with this.
All right, that's cool.
Yeah, can you unpoke that eye? There you go. All right, I'm going to screen share after you. So there you go. All right. Let me just get back in here for a minute. Does anybody else have an issue that we should take a look at? Because you could screen share. So I want to point something out to animate, and this is for graphic designers who want to include some motion, web designers who want to head toward multimedia, multimedia people who juggle as a rule, and of course, full-time animators. Anybody who has any motive to make things move like this. Tracking your layers becomes really important. Like, a lot of animators, they want to get to the stage of making someone walk. And depending how you draw it, you might need layers for both lower legs, left and right, both upper legs. Same for the arms. I'm already up to 8 layers, right? Person doesn't even have a torso or a pelvis yet, and I got 8 layers. It could easily be a dozen layers just to make someone walk. Doesn't have to be, but it could be. So there's this layer awareness becomes really important, that you know what layer has what artwork on it. All right, I want to try a couple tricks with what we just did though. I want you to go back to layer 1. Now in layer 1, we've got 2 different objects that, sorry, in frame 1, we have 2 different objects. Just give me 1 minute. Someone got locked out. All right. So in frame 1, we have 2 objects, but each is on its own layer. Let me make that utterly clear to you. You could only shape tween an object that's alone in its keyframe. It can't share other artwork. If you have other artwork, it has to be on separate layers. Tweening needs independent layers for each moving object. So it's going to be a lot of layers, but less frames, right? We only have 4 keyframes, really. All right, you're in frame 1. I'd like you to try this with me. If this bar on the top is selected, deselect it. So you need your black arrow and just click off of it. If it's selected and you try to change its shape, you're just going to move it. So I want to deselect it because this is what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to change its shape. This experiment is about finding out, how does that look as it heads toward frame 36? So this one's not a rectangle anymore, but I'm going to play it. And it looked great. All right, let's try another related experiment. I would like you to go back to frame 1, and this time I want you to change the rectangle. And when I say change, little shape changes might be nice, but it's kind of up to you, because one of the things we're trying to find out is what works and what doesn't. I can give you rules. There's a handful of things that usually don't work. But there's always surprises, and the only way to find out is to try it. So I've got this very odd shape that wants to turn into a circle. And we're not all going to get the same results. I'm getting lucky today because that looks pretty good. But you know, what's interesting is, how does it look in the middle? Like when you get really lucky, the shape in the middle even makes sense. Sometimes the middle looks all wonky and it's not good enough to use. By the way, if you do want to study yours, each frame, do you remember the good old bracket keys from HTML? In this program, it means go forward one frame at a time or go backwards. Same bracket keys, the angle brackets. So I will often go one frame at a time to study my layers, study my motion, and see how it works. All right. I'd like for everybody to go to your last frame and change the color of both objects. So you're going to the last keyframe. Selecting an object and changing its color. Selecting the other object. And notice it goes to the layers for you. So that's really cool. You could just click the object on stage and it just goes to the layer the object lives on. And I'd like you to rewind it and play it. All right. Why'd I ask you to do that? I want to make the point of what a live tween is. So a live tween lets you manipulate the artwork in the keyframe, but that bar in the middle is live. So if you change either end, the middle updates. That's just crazy, really, because we would have had to do 36 drawings for each layer to make this happen if we were drawing it. 72 separate drawings. And anytime you wanted to make a change, you'd be doomed. Alex, remember just the other day you asked me if I could change, if you could change the color of one of your objects during a frame by frame? You know, and I was waiting to get us here so I could mention this to you. Yeah, in a frame by frame, you have to go to every single frame to make your color change. It's tedious. You should get rich and have your assistant do it. But a shape tween, it's just no big deal. I want to mention, what if you want to change the whole path of the whole thing? You got a square turning into a circle, right? So join me in this. I'd like you to bring your playhead to the middle. And you know, you don't have to do it mathematically. Trust your eyes. You know, get it to the middle. Now on my my upper layer, I have this weird little object. And it started on the left, headed right, and it transforms its shape and color, but it continues to head right until it becomes a circle. But what if here I wanted it to hit the ceiling? That's an interesting problem. All right. I could tell that one moment right in the middle of the tween to be a keyframe. Essentially, I'm going to convert it into a new status. It's no longer just a tween that does what it's told. I'm going to make it a keyframe. And when I do that, I could change its shape, I could change its color, and I could change its position. But I have to make a keyframe right in the middle of my tween. All right. Make sure you know which layer we're talking about, the one with the little drawing on it. So it should be the top layer I'm expecting. But I want you to click right inside of it. So it's maybe hard to see. I can't really zoom in on this element, or I would. Clicking right here. I'm around frame 17 roughly. I clicked on it. And here's the truth about F6. When you had no tweening, we F6'd every time to make a copy and change, make a copy and change. But when you have tweening on, like we do, F6 takes that exact moment and creates a keyframe for you. So all you have to do is click on that moment on the correct layer and tap F6. Remember if you need FN or not. Check though. You should be seeing a black dot right in the middle of that shape tween. What that basically means is this artwork can be changed now. I could bring it up to the ceiling, for example. So this layer now has 3 keyframes. It has the original, where the object was on the left. It's got a new middle one where it hits the ceiling. And then it's got the original right side. Now I'm going to play it and then I'm going to undo it and rewind it. I'm going to do that one more time and then I would like to comment. So I'm going to Command Z until that keyframe goes away. So I'm looking on that layer. There we go. The idea is you had a tween you liked, and then you got a new idea about what that behavior should be for that particular object. So you want to turn that moment right in the middle of the tween into actual artwork. So you could either change shape, color, or location. Now, all I did was change location, and I got to tell you something. I hated it. It made the shape look wrong. I was surprised by that, and I don't even understand it. I want to see if it happens again. So this is the moment I want. I have to click on it. I tap F6. Right now, the animation should look exactly the same, but it doesn't. Look how crumbly it looks. What is that all of a sudden? It wasn't doing this before. That sucks. Well, this is one of the reasons I don't use shape tweening all the time. In any case, my motive was this, though. I wanted to change its location. So I brought it up to the ceiling. And when I rewind it, it plays the whole thing. So before I go any further, what do you guys think of shape tweening?
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad. You know, I think it's cool. And I got to tell you something. I've been animating about 20 years, I guess, right? To be honest, and I'm not bragging because my career has changed a lot. My version of animation was very internet designer stuff. You know, I wanted the name of somebody's website to go, you know, that kind of thing. So it was like a lot of very simple motion graphics. I want to be blunt. It was really good for me. It made my websites look different than everybody else's. So it really helped me create the career I have. But more recently, the last few years, I've been moving into more traditional character animation. You know, people walking and talking and you know, approaching storylines, you know. I want to say about shape tweening, though. One could master shape tweening if you thought it was worth it. There's lots of tricks involved that can make it smoother. I complained about part of mine where the shape didn't feel strong anymore. It got all wonky looking on its way to becoming a circle. There's something called shape hints. Hint, like, let me give you a hint. These are called shape hints. I use them, but I don't like them a hell of a lot. If I needed shape tweening more, though, I would practice. I'd read up on shape hints. Those of you who use Illustrator may have an understanding of anchor points. So I just want to say something very quickly to those people. Shape tweenings work the best and most reliably if all the shapes have the same number of anchor points. It could figure out how to get from one shape to the other. But right now I want to do 1 or 2 more experiments and save some time for my favorite kind of tweening. One that I use a lot and I push very hard in intro to 2D animation. So let's just try something else together. Could everyone open up a new page? File menu new or Command N. Let's go with the same dimensions. 640, 480, frame rate of 24. Let's click create. I want to start with something very basic and then show you what would break it. Right? So, could everybody give me a square or a similar rectangle on the top? I'd like us to make this animation take a little longer. It's going to become a bigger square on the bottom. So 2 seconds, I'd like to go a little bit more than that. Could you join me by finding frame 60? Now remember, whenever you need a new drawing and there's no keyframe there, you make a blank keyframe yourself. So here we are in frame 60, and I'm going to control click or right click and choose this. Insert blank keyframe. Now I want to keep this very simple. So what I'm looking for is another rectangle, maybe with a different color. Maybe just a little different than the first. So I have this in frame 1, pretty squarish thing up against the ceiling. And I've got this in frame 60. So it's about 2.5 seconds down the road. Actually, it's exactly 2.5 seconds down the road. All right. Now, I'd like you to go ahead and turn the tween on. Now, remember, the tween is done in between the two keyframes and on the correct layer. You only have one layer, so click in that layer, anywhere in between the two ends. Control click or right click, and we're back to create shape tween. Now, this is clear as a bell. Both rectangles have 4 corners, 4 anchors, right? They're just different sizes. It should be completely smooth. And we've seen this before, so let's just rewind it and make sure though. What would break it? All right, I want to make a couple clear points. So I've been maintaining that you only want one object on a layer if you're going to tween, right? And I personally use 3 different kinds of tweening, and they all share that same rule. So what if we broke the rule though, just to see what would happen? Could you go to frame 1 with me? In frame 1, I'd like you to either add a few little ovals or a few little squares. So I'm taking the oval tool to make a point. I'm going to put an oval here. I'm totally breaking the rules. Putting an oval here and one here. So essentially frame 1 has 4 drawings and the keyframe in 60 has 1. Now, if I'm going to ask this to tween, the question becomes, can I imagine it? Bear with me for a minute. I'm not saying the program's going to read your mind, but if you can't imagine it, why would the program be able to imagine it? So what's going to happen is some of us are going to get lucky and it's just going to look good because you're having a lucky day. Some of us are not going to be that lucky and it's going to look completely crazed. I want mine to break to prove my point. It would be reverse luck for me if it worked. I'm going to see. Can you play yours? Now, even though that looked kind of cool, this is not really acceptable. Let me defend that comment. If this was a fine art project, everything's acceptable as long as you like it. But if it's a commercial project, it's not acceptable if I can't edit it. So if my client said, oh, we love it, but I don't like this little green box, please change it. I can't do it because there's no explanation why that happened anyway. It's a desperate software trying to turn 4 shapes into one and guessing how to do it. So it's not acceptable. All right, I'm going to ask you to go back to frame 1 and delete those extra objects. I'm using the black arrow. I want to show you another anomaly, another thing that breaks the rules. But let me back up for a second. I'm very, very aware that I have like 5 or 6 majors in the room right now. The animation department is BMCC's fastest growing art department right now. And that's why I have a few animation students in here. I have liberal arts people in here and tech people, you know, people going into computer support and that kind of thing, all different kinds of people. So I know you all have different levels of investment in this. If you're invested because it comes close to your career goals, great. If you're invested just because you find it interesting, great. If you don't fall into those 2 categories, just do your best with it. It's like, I hated math class, but I'm sure glad I took it. You know, it made my life a little wider. It made me a little bit more informed. So I want to show you what else would break it. I want you to double check something for me. Frame 1 should have one object in it now. So I'm zooming back a little to be sure. The last frame also has one object in it. Diamond, I want to say something to you though. You know, when you were screen sharing before, and I said, oh, wow, it looks like you have two objects in that first frame, but I couldn't find it. The reason I said that is it had the same weird behavior as you just saw in mine when I had multiple objects in a frame.
Oh.
So that's why I was looking for it. It's possible that one was on top of the other or some weirdness like that. But that's usually what causes that kind of problem. Okay. If you check both keyframes, right, each drawing is alone, I want you to try something with me. All right. You probably remember, I know you remember, that merge mode lets you combine shapes, but you might have forgotten that it also lets you punch a hole. I want you to see what would happen if we put a hole in one of these shapes, but not in the second one. So here's what I'm going to suggest. You're on frame 1. We're talking about the rectangle. I'd like you to get the oval tool and make sure it has a different fill. Because what I'm going to ask you to do is put an oval about here. That's already asking for trouble. You know, I have no idea what that's going to, I have to look. It's not my goal, but I have to peek. Just give me a minute. I want to see what it's going to do. Pretty interesting. But again, hard to edit. Why did I actually make you do it? I want to use that circle you made as a hole puncher. So all you have to do is get the black arrow, select that circle and delete it. So get my black arrow, selecting it, and I'm going to press delete. That's a hole, right? So if I put a sky on a lower layer, I'm going to see it through that hole like a window. Let's see how it plays though. So once you're ready, play it. And it almost worked, right? In mine anyway, the hole opened up fairly well. Looks like a TV set gone wrong. But then all of a sudden, something weird happens. That's not right. All right, I want to make a couple of points. I'm not really here to go over every possible flaw or every possible virtue, but I just want to, why do people tell you to put one shape on each layer? I think you're getting a taste for it because it's wildly unpredictable if you don't do it. I want to wrap up this subject and I want to introduce you to something that we're going to use quite a bit for the rest of the semester. So I want to just wrap this subject up by saying a couple little things. Shape tweening is the best kind of tweening to learn first. You get this idea that you're going from keyframe to keyframe. They each have related art, but different. And the tween helps you do whatever in between. So it's a great way to introduce those ideas. I don't know how popular it is. I've been using it for 20 years, but barely, because like I said, it's a little wild. A little. You know, if one loved it, you'd invest yourself and then you would figure out all the secrets. I want to introduce something kind of large. It's a little bit harder, but it's very dominant in this particular program, and it's called Classic Tweening. So bear with me. You've tried frame by frame. That's not tweening, right? You making every single drawing. F6 helped, but you were still making every drawing. That's the tradition, and it had to be the first, I'm thinking like 80, 90 years of animation is like most of animation history, is frame by frame. Then we did shape tweening, but classic tweening is also old, and that's why it has the term classic. I would have to estimate 20 years old, about. But what it can do is this. You have total control. You could control speed. You could even have things speed up and slow down with very little work. You could change tint, basically color. You could change transparency so the thing could become invisible and visible. And you could rotate the object. Now you can't rotate with a shape tween. You rotate a square, it just thinks you made a diamond. So nothing's going to be turning, you know? So if you need to rotate, you need a different kind of tween. All right, I'm going to ask everybody to join me as closely as you can. This is going to be a little harder. All right. If your computer's slowing down, you could close these earlier documents. They have little X's on the top. And you only change them if you want. But if you don't want, you could just close them up. I only mention that because if your computer is dealing with too much stress, we can unstress it by taking some stuff off its back. Just close it up. All right, let's get a new document. I'm going to stick with the same size. File menu, new. $640, $480, $24. All right, I need a rectangle in the top left corner. I think it's a good idea to work without a stroke right now. The color's up to you, right? Stroke, I'd prefer no stroke. And I need something not too large. I'm thinking maybe like that. Okay. Quick moment of contemporary animation history. Flash, right, which was the parent of Adobe Animate, got popular at first because of one main brilliant move. It didn't send pixels through the phone line. So before that, if you were doing animation, every single pixel of every single drawing had to go through the phone line or DSL or whatever it was to get to your visitor's house and show an animation. There was no way a computer could handle that. You saw how big JPEGs can get, and it's all that pixel data. So they figured out how to do it with anchor points. We like to say vector art, but then they did this. They figured out how to send instructions to the other computer without the art. It sent the instructions, and then the other person's computer rebuilt the artwork because the instructions could get through the phone line instantly, but zillions of pixels couldn't. So it simply sent the instructions through, which is sort of brilliant. To make it even faster, they created a library. Now we're about to use the library. An object that gets classic tweened lives in the library. And I want to show you how that's going to work. Can you get the black arrow? If you have no stroke, you could click it once. But if it does have an outline, you have to click it twice to select it. We're going to do something called convert to symbol, and we're going to be doing a lot of this in the next week or so. So if it's selected, you see little dots on it. I'd like you to control click or right click right on the artwork. So not on the timeline, on the artwork. And I want you to see this toward the bottom. Convert to symbol. Be very careful that you're choosing the right one. Convert to symbol. This window opens up. It gives you a chance to name it. Let's just call this one box. I want to verify something with you before we leave this little window. Does your type say graphic?
Mine says movie clip.
Does it? Do all of yours say movie clip?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes.
Glad I asked. So I will take a peek at something with me. See what the choices are. All right. So everything that lives in the library, which you're about to see, is a symbol of these three types. You can have movie clip symbols, button symbols, or graphic symbols. I want to say a couple quick words. Programmers love movie clip symbols because you could take your drawing of a rocket ship and call it Rocket 1. You could duplicate it and call the other one Rocket 2. And then you could program Rocket 1 so that it knows what to do in a given situation, like raise the score if you hit an asteroid, or blow up if you hit the other rocket. So movie clips can be programmed. Web designers love button because they can make buttons But they could also be programmed. So you could say, go to my next page. I used to live both of these. But full-time animators love this one the most. So we're going to choose graphic. It can't be programmed, that's true, but it could do many, many tricks that the other two can't, and we'll see what we can get to. Please choose graphic, call it box, and click OK. All right, I want us to get a look in the libraries. Your library's probably open now. It shares a slot with the properties palette. So if you look over on your right, for most of us, it should be on the right. Here's the properties palette, but way at the top, where it says properties, there's a tab next to it that says library. So they usually share this slot. I want you to look at the library. If your library doesn't show up at all, just go to the window menu. All the palettes, that means any of these little windows that stay open, even the tools and the timeline, they're all listed here. So here's the library. So what you should see in it is something that says box, with a weird little symbol that means graphic symbol, weird little icon, I should say, and above it a preview. Did it show up in your library, everybody? Gotcha. All right, great. Okay. This is where it gets truly interesting. It's going to take a little bit of thought, but I think you're going to like it. We are going to ask for a menu again. I'd like to point something out. When you right-click to get a menu or control-click, it's either of two places. It's either on the artwork itself, like when you did convert to symbol, or it's on the keyframe or in the layer of the timeline to say, oh, turn on my Shape Tween or something like that. So it's either art-based, you right-click on the artwork, or it's timeline-based. You right-click somewhere on the timeline. Well, you just took care of the artwork. Let's go to the timeline to frame 1. And I'd like you to right-click if you have that kind of mouse, or control-click. So we've seen this menu before, but now it won't let you shape tween. All right, let me get that out of the way. Because you can't shape tween a symbol. You can't shape tween something that lives in the library. Those are freeze-dried. You can't change their shape. All right, it might sound disappointing, but what it can do is cool. Can you please choose Classic Tween? Now look, I narrate a lot the first time we try something, and then I try to simplify it and clarify it. So I'm just talking a lot to get some ideas off the ground. When you turned on your Classic Tween, I'm hoping that you're seeing a purple bar. You already know that an orange bar down there means Shape Tween. So they're color-coded, right? In this version, the purplish bar means Classic Tween, and the orange one means Shape. Are you all getting a purple bar? All right.
Yes.
Great. Also, it gave you 1 second of time, right? You didn't ask for it. It just spread out to frame 24. I actually want a lot more time than that, because I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to have this thing crawl across the ceiling, drop down the side, cross across the floor, and then go back up to where it started. So it's going to be a round trip going across each side, ceilings and floors, and it's going to take 15 frames per side. So we need 60 to work with. Could you go out to frame 60? I want you to just try a few things with me. How do you just ask for more time? F5. F6 copies artwork, but F5 just gives you more time. So I want you to go to frame 60 and F5. You might need your FN key so that purple bar is longer. All right, this is my favorite part, what's about to happen. So once you've established how long you need, all you're going to do is bring the playhead over to any moment where you need to change the location of the object. So let's be clearer than that. Could you bring the playhead back to frame 1? In 15 frames, I want this object to make it to the right corner. So the way to do that is just find frame 15. You just bring the playhead over. Simply grab the object on stage and drag it to the right. Just be sure your playhead is on 15 and drag it over to the right. So this is what I got now. And it just stays there. By frame 30 though, I want it to hit the ground. So it's sliding down that right wall. So I'm simply going to go 15 frames further. And then I'm going to drag the artwork down to the right. And if you bring it back, you'll see what you got. Pretty cool. I think you got the pattern by now. But I am the narrator of the show. So I am going to go to frame 45. So here's the beginning. 15 was in the corner, 30's in this corner, 45 is going to be in the next corner. So I find that moment in time with the playhead, and then I simply drag this over to the left. Well, by frame 60, I want it to return. So right now, it's going to just stop there and hang out. So when you're ready, bring the playhead over to the last frame and return that object. Slick. Did it work?
It worked all right.
All right. Guys, I'm going to look at my chat if anybody prefers to keep me posted via chat. I'm going to, I wish I had 2 sets of eyes. I'd keep one on that. Okay. I do want to show you what's cool about that, but I'd like to do it one more time much faster, right? And then I want to show you some really cool features of it, right? So, can everyone open a new document? Same width, same height, same frame rate. Click create. Every document gets a new library, gets its own private library. Let's get the rectangle tool. If you're bored of the color, choose a different one. And let's start in the same corner. All right, let me get a rule out of the way. I want to say something inspiring. To be blunt with you, when it comes to money in my own career, I made it all on Classic Tweening. Really, just about everything that I've done in animation involved Classic Tweening at a very deep level. So I'm a big fan. So the first thing you have to do is draw the artwork and then make it a symbol right away. The order is kind of critical. So you draw your rectangle, can you please select it? Do you remember how you made it a symbol the first time? How'd you do it?
Right click inside the box.
Exactly. So you right click on the artwork or control click, and way down here is convert to symbol. It's got a shortcut, but right now I'm going to do it this way. So you make sure the artwork is selected, and then you right click it or control click it. And at the bottom, convert to symbol. So I'm going to call this one box also. It's got its own library, so that's fine. And I'm going to make sure the type is a graphic. So it's a graphic symbol. And we click OK. You should always peek in your library to make sure it arrived. So here's my library. All right. Once you know it's a symbol, you could just go right ahead and turn on the Classic Tween. Right? So Diamond was saying you click on the artwork to make the symbol. I'm saying you click on the keyframe to turn on the tween. So let's go down to the layer, find that keyframe, it should be black now, and you right click it or you control click it. And again, it's all about Classic Tween. Don't slip and choose this next one, Classic Tween. It's starting to look familiar, right? It gave you 1 second to work with, but it's not enough time for this thing to travel around all 4 sides. So I want to do it with 60 frames again. Now this is hard to remember, this part. To extend time, you use F5. F5 is a big player. So I clicked right here. I also, I could control click it and just say insert frame. You see F5? It means it's not a keyframe, can't draw on it, but it is time. I like F5 instead. All right, now bring your playhead back to the beginning. If you are really sure you know how to finish this one, you go right ahead. If you're not sure, start with me. You made your symbol, you're good. You turned on your Classic Tween, you're double good. Now I'm really ready to start thinking about time and location. So I'm going to go out to frame 15 by dragging the playhead over. And now I want to tell that artwork it should arrive here. That's the location. So time is frame 15, location is here. Every 15 frames, I want it to arrive at the next corner. So if you're comfortable moving forward without me, you do that. If you're not comfortable, just wait for me for a moment. All right, I'm going to drag it over to 30. 15 frames further. Now I'm changing the location. I'm going with the same pattern, right? That was frame 30, so I'm going to go to 45 next. Drag the playhead. Bring that object to the left. I got 15 frames left, so I'm going to drag it all the way to the end and bring it back.
场景
It's fast, isn't it? Now, look, if you're getting it most of the time, great. You're getting it half the time, pretty good. If you're not getting it all the time, don't stress. Right? This is still very early steps. Does anybody need a hand with this part? I could look at your screen if it would help. Because what I'm about to do is kind of wild. All right. We have just enough time to taste a few reasons this got so popular. Thank you, Shuyin. All right. 1. So that symbol in the library, what does it really do? Well, guess what? All 4 corners of this animation are called instances. They're instances of that symbol. Think of them as clones. They're clones of the one that's in the library, but they're connected to it deeply. If I change the one in the library, they all change. I'd like for everybody to join me in the first time we're going to try symbol editing mode. This is a big player in Adobe stuff. All right. I'd like you to go to the library and find that graphic symbol, and notice it's got this odd little icon. That means graphic symbol, by the way. I want you to double click it. I don't double click the name because it might think you're going to change the name. I'm going to double click its little symbol right here. At first, that looks a little jarring. You left your other layers behind, all your artwork got left behind. It's like, oh no, but it's fine. You just went to the dressing room, I call it. Symbol editing mode is the dressing room. Here, you could change the way your actor looks. So this is what I'd like you to do. 1, double check that the top left looks like this. This tells me the name of a symbol when I'm in symbol editing mode. Right? If I click that arrow, it takes me back to the movie. So I'm going to go back to the library again, double click the icon like I did before. Here I am, I'm in symbol editing mode. Let's try a few things. If your drawing looks selected to you, it's got little dots, click off of it. I'd like you to change its shape a little. I think I'd like to give it a stripe just for the fun of it. This is how you do that. Still have the black arrow. I'm going to start up here. I want to make sure it's not selected. Not selected. Watch this move because it's hard to describe. I'm going to press and drag all the way through the middle of it, which selected just those pixels. Now I'm going to change the color. If you missed it, I'm going to do that one more time. Look, the main point is I could do whatever I want to this, really. Right? I just changed the shape a little and I'm adding a stripe. And I'm going to any fill box I could see here or the bottom of the toolbar. And I'm picking a new color for it. All right. Let's go back to the movie. So again, to get back into the movie, we're simply calling it scene 1. You're in symbol editing mode right now. So you're in the dressing room and you want to take the actor back to the set. So in the top left, you see this little arrow. Do you all see that? Right? That means let me out of here. So I'm going to click that little arrow and we're back in the scene. Sure enough, the actor updated. Why don't you play your movie? One cool thing you couldn't do with frame by frame and you couldn't do with Shape Tween is make a universal change like that. So if this thing showed up through my entire movie, no matter how long the movie was, an hour long, they all just updated. That's pretty crazy. Guys, it's 2:30. We have just enough time to try some fun stuff that I'd like to do kind of quickly. Next time I see you, I'm going to take these ideas and we're going to really go crazy, kind of like 1960s psychedelic strangeness, using these same steps. But I'd like to try a couple quick things with me. Now, if you notice on your timeline, you probably got keyframes similar to mine every 15 frames. I'd like you to find the keyframe that represents this moment. So that object hit the right corner. There should be a keyframe for it. If there isn't, just go to the nearest keyframe you can. Now, what I want to happen is I want this object to get larger on its way there, and I want it to rotate. So all I have to do is go over this particular keyframe and try out a very simple, awesome tool. On the toolbar, the second tool down is probably this tool, the free transform tool. You could press Q if you can't find it. It should help you find it. Now, since this drawing here is in a keyframe, look what I could do with this tool, free transform. I could make it huge and I could rotate it. I'd like you to do that. So what's going to happen is the first frame is the way it was. As it heads to the right, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's going to rotate. But remember, after this, it heads toward the floor. So on the way down, it's going to get smaller and smaller and rotate back to the way it was, because we're only changing one key moment. Everything before it's going to respond, everything right after it's going to respond. So please rewind the playhead and hit return. Now that was a lot more interesting. All right, quick rule about transforming a symbol that's on stage. You could only do it if there's a keyframe there, right? Or earlier today, we took a moment and converted it to a keyframe. We went right in a tween, clicked on something and F6'd, and it gave you a keyframe. So knowing that, I could pretty much change this object anywhere. But what I'd like to do is make a couple changes with the keyframes we have now. So the object headed to the right, that was pretty cool. And now it heads down to frame 30. If yours is just like mine, head to frame 30. If yours is different, try to find some parallel moment, where this object hits the corner. Even though I'm running out of time, what I'm trying to do is introduce this subject to you that is just simply called properties. If these objects are essentially the same, what makes them different? What properties are there? Well, you just tried scale. It's really just size, right? So I went with some huge scale. Rotation's a property. You tried rotation. But here's another cool one, tint. So to make an object change color in a classic tween, you can't pick them from the color chips. You could do that in the library, but they'd all change. So we see it as tinting. The object tints a little on its way. All right. Make sure your playhead is over a keyframe. But since we're going to work on the artwork, you also have to click the artwork once. Just once. Now, what should happen at that stage is the properties palette on the right has changed, and now it includes this called color effects. I want to point out, if you just click in the timeline, that won't show up. It's okay to click a keyframe, but you do have to click the artwork if you're going to make a change to art. So I'm going to click it once. That brings up color effects. Let's choose Tint. Once you choose Tint, use this chip for a new color and this slider for the amount of that color. So I'm going to click it. I'm going to go to red. And red isn't mixing well with my original color. It's looking kind of brown. But if I mix it all the way to 100%, it's just red. I can't even see the stripe because the whole thing tinted red. All right. I'm going to rewind and play. I got a lot more activity going on here because I'm using properties. I'm going to squeeze in one last property. That's it for today. You did scale. Man, Classic Tween loves scale. You did rotation. The human eye cannot resist rotation. Just can't resist it because we don't rotate, you know? So it's pretty rare when you see something actually rotate. Also, we're only comfortable like this and like this. I'm counting sitting as upright. So anything in between is very uncomfortable. And filmmakers use that knowledge all the time, especially in horror movies. I want to try some transparency. This one program calls it alpha. The steps are very similar. I'd like you to choose a keyframe you haven't tried yet. I'm going to use this one. The object has returned to its original color, right? It tweened over from that tint. But I want to change it. So I go over the keyframe or I click the keyframe. But either way, you do have to click the artwork once. We're back to color effects. You just learned tint. But here we also have alpha. Alpha is really easy. Find a keyframe, click the artwork, and come here. Alpha. 0 alpha means completely invisible. But you can make it as transparent as you want. But keep in mind, it's only going to be completely invisible for 1/24th of a second, right? It's going to get invisible, be gone, and then it's going to return on the way back up. All right, let's play that animation. All right, I want you to pop in a background color with me. So I'm going to say a couple closing comments. All right. To give it a background color, just make sure nothing's selected. So if necessary, just click on empty stage. Way over here is your stage color. If something's selected, it's going to give information about that. So I'm going to click on the empty stage. Choose any color you feel like. And play it. All right. It's 2:38. All I'm going to do is go over saving and exporting an animated GIF, right? We're going to take this substantially further. You have some experience now next Tuesday, right? So if you do have to take off because you got a class right after mine or something like that, I already took attendance, you're good. All right. We've not saved this even once, so I was acting a little wild. Let's save it now. File menu, save.
Imagine if you lost all your progress in the middle of class
I
without
know,
saving.
it was really shabby. And it has happened, just I'm a lucky guy, so it hasn't happened enough to teach me otherwise. So anyway, choose where you want to save it. Everybody knows that routine, wherever you want to put it. I'm going to just put mine loose on the desktop for now. Wait a second here. Why do these all say? Oh yeah, yeah. I'm going to save it to the desktop. You can give it any kind of name you want. This is an FLA file, but you can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call mine Classic Tween 1, but you can use any name you like or today's date. Simply save it. You can open it anytime you want if you want to continue it or study it or alter it. About the animated GIF. The animated GIFs here are really handy because we're not using sound and we're making short movies. So the only negatives of an animated GIF is no sound ever, and they're limited to 216 colors. Right now we're choosing from a web-safe palette every time we pick colors, so it's within the range of acceptable color. All right, let's go to the File menu to make our GIF. File menu, Export, Export Animated GIF. File menu, Export, Export Animated GIF. Give it a minute. This is a very large window for a very small feature, right? So I just want to say a couple things about it before I let you go. One thing that's annoying about this window is it doesn't always fit. So I apologize to any of you who can't see the whole window. It's some kind of glitch that often happens at school. It's just weird. And frankly, this window is filled with nonsense. They could make it half the size. So I hope you could see what you need. I want to point out just a couple quick things that I didn't go over last time. One, I would make sure transparency is not checked. What that means is if it's on, it ignores the background color, because it thinks you want to put it in another program over that background or on a web page and use that color, the color of the web page. So if this is checked, the background's going to disappear. Well, we just gave it a background, so I'm going to uncheck it. All right. The next thing that's kind of important, a little finicky, is where it says looping. You know, I got to say, Adobe never got this right, and it keeps changing. It used to have once, number of times, and forever. And I happen to really like number of times. I could say, oh, great, play it 3 times and stop because it's annoying after that. But it didn't always work. So they limited it to once or always. So it's kind of up to you and it depends on the situation. I'm leaving mine at forever. I like the idea that anything is forever. Anyway, no, all right, gives you a chance to rename it. And if you don't change your mind, this is what happens. It uses the base name, but doesn't use FLA because it's a GIF, and it saves it to the same place. So if you've been putting it all in one folder, all your exports are going to live in the same folder, and that's kind of nice. So mine's on the desktop. That's good for me. I'm going to click Save. I wanted to show you something for anyone who could stay. We went 2 minutes over. GIFs were made for the internet, period. You know, they're not really used in broadcast, but they're used all over the internet and all over social media. So yeah, you could put this on YouTube. You could put this on Instagram. You know, you can do whatever you want with it. But if you want to test it, my favorite way to test it is to drag it into a browser. It doesn't like my PDFs. So I'm going to open up a new tab. So I got an empty tab now. And now I just got to find it on my very messy desktop. I'm going to find it a different way because I really need to clean up. Give me a second there. So you can go to the physical desktop. Mine's too messy to find anything. So here it is. Just simply drag and drop it anywhere in the browser. And that's exactly what it's going to look like on the internet. All right. Is it working? Cool.
I'm having a little issue.
Yeah.
When I go to save my GIF, it changes the background color. It doesn't keep my stage color. And I noticed on yours, this area was grayed out, but mine is not grayed out where it says matte.
Matte. Yeah, let me get a quick look.
Yeah. Okay.
So mine that says matte is grayed out. Is yours?
Mine is not.
Yours is not. Is your transparency off?
My transparency is off, yes.
Did you choose your colors from the same palette that I did? You know, the standard palette that shows up, or did you
Yeah.
find another?
Yeah.
You did?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little surprising because those are supposed to be web safe colors. When you look at this color table, let me just think for a second here. What do I have for you? What would be causing that color shift? I honestly don't know off the top of my head, so I'm trying to think about other options. This feature up here chooses colors based on different algorithms. I was in selective, which I assumed was the default, but it might not be.
Yeah, mine is selected. Everything else about that window is the same.
This too?
Yeah,
So the only difference you see is here?
correct.
All right, and so this is, you've looked at every little thing, but your matte is not gray. I am temporarily stumped.
Okay.
I have to admit, I was tempted to say that these shift the colors into the web safe palette.
I played with that too, just for fun, but
no
nothing's
change.
working. Yeah, I'll Google it.
Yeah, or if you discover what it is, let me know, and if I have a brainstorm, I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. See, if I ended 2 minutes early, I would have gotten a perfect score. I'm just kidding. Does anybody have any questions for me about any of the above?
No, nothing.
So let me just tell you what's coming up. You know, frankly, you know, since it's intro to multimedia, right, and we're just in this animation section, you know, we can't go to, you know, wilder things like people walking or talking or blinking for that matter, which are all deeper. But they all mix the technologies you've already seen, right? And then some. They're all part of my intro class, my intro to 2D class, MMP260. By the way, I don't know if there's room in that class or not. I know at my other school, my class is already filled, which I was a little shocked because I didn't even know people were registering. But, you know, you could always look. There's probably room for anyone who wants to take it Friday morning, MMP260. But we're sticking mostly with graphic elements. And the way that I want to take it to a professional place is soon to move into typography. Like I said to you at the beginning today, motion typography is one of the biggest money makers because animators do it, even if a commercial isn't animated. You know, even if it's a family driving along in their car, talking about how safe it is, the text is still animated. So it's a very, very big part of video, animation, advertising, and all screen-based motion. I'm shocked. This is my second class today. How many of you guys had a class this morning?
Only one.
Am I alone with that? I'm not used to it. I'm old. I'm not supposed to have to do that. That's for young people.
Even
Anyway,
then.
if there are no questions, I'm going to let you go. Jason, did I sense a question?
No,
What's that?
well, actually, it was from last time, I think from Tuesday. Do you know
Did you
any?
say something?
It's like a personal question, but do you know any like references for backgrounds that I could use? Because for my personal work, I'm learning how to do
Let
backgrounds.
me address that with you. Gotcha. Give me a second to address that. I want to. I think I'm going to turn off my recording though, because I think people are never sure when the class ends. Sometimes, anyhow. So let me just turn.
All right.
I'm just going to stop recording. I'm going to say goodbye to people watching this on YouTube. See you next class. Stop recording. Anyone who has to go, feel free to go. Took attendance. Rose, I was pleased to find out that you fixed that problem.
Yeah.
You know, I forgot somebody else in the class has the same problem and I suddenly forgot who. I was going to ask you to help them. All right, maybe next time.
But yeah, it just randomly decided driver